Thank you for tuning in to the Hope.Strength.Courage podcast, love and support for parents whose kids are fighting for their lives. A weekly podcast created to support parents and caregivers of children diagnosed with cancer, where you will find resources collected to help you face each day with hope, strength, and courage. From interviews with the top experts in their fields, doctors, psychologists, chaplains, and inspiring frontline workers in pediatric oncology as they share their best advice, as well as day-to-day advice collected from other cancer moms and leaders in personal growth and development. From individuals who understand how hard it can be, I hope you will feel better prepared to cope with the day-to-day challenges of caring for your child. Hi, I am Laura Lane, and I am your host. My own daughter Celeste was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 12. In 2015, I wrote about our experiences in the book, Two Mothers, One Prayer, Facing Your Child's Cancer with Hope, Strength, and Courage. Since that time, I have dedicated thousands of hours to share with other parents and caregivers the resources, tools, tips, and skills and strategies I learned that helped our family stay happier, healthier, and more hopeful. My goal is to share with you my interviews with experts to support you as you care for a child with cancer. Today's episode features my interview with Tattoo Tom Michell, founder and director of Still Brave Childhood Cancer Foundation. Last week, we spoke with author and cancer survivor Annie Poole about how to turn your child's cancer journey into an adventure. This week, Tattoo Tom shares the work he is doing on a daily basis to support families and advocate for more childhood cancer funding through his creative and fun projects and slightly crazy ultramarathon adventures. Tom is an inspiration on how he lives up to his promise to his daughter Shayla to continue to support other cancer families the best way he can. I hope you will enjoy this interview as much as I did. I am pleased to formally introduce you to Tom Michell, also known as Tattoo Tom. Tom is the founder and director of Still Brave Childhood Cancer Foundation, affectionately known as Tattoo Tom by the children and families whom he serves. He's also a nationally recognized activist and advocate for children with cancer and their families. Following the death of his daughter Shayla in 2009 from Hodgkin's lymphoma, Tom dedicated his entire life to providing non-medical support to children with cancer and their families. He's also committed to raising awareness of the need for more research funding and safer, less toxic treatments for children with cancer. Dubbing himself and those who work for Still Brave as renegades, Tattoo Tom is always anxious to share what he's learned, grown to understand but refuses to accept. He's very outspoken. His obvious passion, continued activism, and his innate need to be a voice for those who do not have one has led him to being at the forefront of a grassroots movement, being loudly and unapologetically vocal about what matters most, the eradication of childhood cancer. Please welcome my guest, Tattoo Tom Michell.
Thanks for having me.
So, if you could give us some background first by telling us a little bit about yourself and your daughter, Shayla.
Okay, so in July of 2007, I got a phone call from Shayla. She was living with her mom at the time and said that she wasn't feeling very well and asked me if I could take her to the doctor. She thought maybe she had a sinus infection or something. So I picked her up. I said, sure, we'll grab some dinner afterwards. Well, it turns out my daughter's sinus infection was anything but. It was actually a huge cancerous tumor that was taking up 2/3 of her chest, and it caused one of her lungs to collapse.
Wow.
So long story short, we were rushed to the hospital, and we were immediately diagnosed with a stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis. At that time, Shayla came to live with me full time, and as a single dad, I was faced with a lot of the struggles that a two-parent family might face, but I was faced with them as a single dad as she went through about 16 months of treatment before she finally succumbed to her disease and passed away in January of 2009. My daughter was a teenager. She wasn't a little kid, so we had a lot of very candid conversations after we sort of got I'm giving you the condensed version here, but after we sort of got the hospice situation, we had a lot of very candid conversations about what my life might look like after she passed away. And one of the things that she made me promise is that I would do what I could to help similar families who were in situations that we found ourselves in. There were days where, in spite of the fact that she was fighting for her life and going to all these chemotherapy and radiation appointments, I didn't have gas money to put in my car to get her there. I didn't have money to buy groceries. It's not because I'm lazy. I've always owned my own businesses. I've always made a tremendous amount of money, but I just couldn't work. So we were privy to many of the holes and many of the challenges facing a family that has a child that's in treatment for cancer beyond the obvious things. So one of the things that I did is I promised her that I would do everything I could to help other families. And after a short grieving period, after she passed away, that's exactly what I did. So I've dedicated my life to doing anything that I possibly can. We started Still Brave a little bit before Shayla passed away. And they got real serious about it. In about 2011, we got our incorporation, became an official 501c. And about a year and a half ago, we got so busy and so big that I became a full-time employee. Sort of a full-time employee with Still Brave. It's actually my job now.
Wow, that's awesome. So I have a list of other questions for you. So tell us about this term renegades that you use for yourself and for the people who work for you at Still Brave.
Okay, so you can look at me and tell that I'm not your average typical childhood cancer activist or advocate. I'm just not. We don't have a lot of big sales. That's not how we raise money. Mm-hmm. There's a song by a band called Rage Against the Machine. Yeah, and in that song, they one of the lines, it's actually an older song, but one of the lines is that renegades are people with their own philosophies. They change the course of history. Everyday people like you and me. Mm-hmm. So we adopted that phrase. We wanted to be the voice for children with cancer. We wanted to be the regular, everyday people that stepped up and made a change. And so we call ourselves renegades, and we approach everything that way. I don't candy code anything. If you follow my Facebook or you've seen any of my TED Talks, you'll know that I don't candy code anything. I'm not a sunshine and rainbows kind of guy. I present it to you accurately. Yep. I present it to you in a real, raw, authentic way. Some people get down with my brand of activism, and some people don't. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It's a numbers game, and we do attract a demographic that is very kind and compassionate, that might not be attracted to your average childhood cancer organization. So renegade is a very affectionate term. It just means that we don't candy code anything. We're very aggressive in our approach. We're not too interested in following the rules. We don't care who likes us and who doesn't like us outside of the families whom we serve.
Right. Well, I think that's a powerful term. And yes, I know who Rage Against the Machine is.
Awesome.
I had my shaved head days, my industrial. I listened to some of that music years ago.
Great.
So tell us, what services does Still Brave provide?
Okay, so again, being a single dad, I was privy to a lot of the challenges that a two-parent family would face, but I was faced as a single parent. So what my organization does, some of the many things that we do, and we don't box ourselves in to necessarily, we keep our doors kind of open. There's really, the only thing that we don't do is and that's why we call it non-medical support. We don't raise money for research. We don't concern ourselves with research. Right. There are a gazillion organizations out there that are doing that. Personally, I feel as though I would be wasting my money. I think it's going to take millions and millions and billions of dollars, and I think the government needs to step up. I don't think if I gave $470,000 to research, I think it would be a drop in the bucket. So my organization, while we certainly support research, I think that money needs to come from the government. That's a whole nother, or maybe we'll have that conversation too. But so we don't concern ourselves with research. What we do is we provide day-to-day services for families that are in the midst of childhood, because there is no cure right now. There is no safe treatments. It's all toxic. It's all horrible. It's a tremendous, daunting journey. So some of the challenges that I was faced with, I already spoke briefly about. I didn't have gas to get to some treatments. I didn't have groceries. I couldn't pay rent. So my organization does that. We provide gas cards. We provide grocery cards. We help with rent. We help with utilities. We do car repairs and improvements. We do home repair and improvements. If you get behind on raking your leaves, we'll send a team of renegades out to rake your leaves. In some cases, we've assisted with rides to treatment. We sadly help pay for way too many funerals. We'll provide iPads, birthday parties for kids. Really, there's nothing that we won't do. If we get a request from a social worker or from a family and it's a genuine need or request, I will charge hell with half a bucket of water and a gasoline suit to meet it.
Right. That's incredible. That is so desperately needed. That's fabulous. What is the difference between the mission of Still Brave and your personal? So tell us the difference. You're Tattoo Tom. So what's the difference between Still Brave and Tattoo Tom?
Okay, it's very important to note that, because while Still Brave doesn't concern themselves with research, Tattoo Tom does.
Okay.
So I'm two separate entities. I run and the director of Still Brave. It's my full-time job working for them, but we're not concerned with research. So what I do for Still Brave is separate. What Tattoo Tom does is I go and I get out there and I talk about the toxic treatments. I talk about the fact that we're treating our kids with 30, 40, 50-year-old chemotherapies. These medicines are essentially, we euphemistically call them medicines. Essentially, they're poison derived from mustard gas in World War II. And you're likely to find me with a picket sign in front of the National Institutes of Health protesting the National Cancer Institute, who only earmarks, in the United States, they only earmark 4% of their billions of dollar budget for childhood cancer research. 4% is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Our children are dying. There have only been 3 new drugs approved in the past 30 years by the FDA to treat childhood cancers. I don't understand. I'm not a particularly bright guy, but I don't understand how they think 4% is enough. I've been to more funerals than birthdays this year. Our children are, if they are lucky enough to survive, they're plagued with secondary cancers. They're plagued with chronic health problems. Because of the toxic treatments that we're putting in the kids. It's this archaic chess game that goes on, and you can tell I'm a little bit passionate about this. It's this archaic chess game that goes on. We put this poison in our kids to try to kill cancer cells. And yes, the chemotherapies do kill cancer cells, but they also kill healthy cells.
Yeah.
So you play this archaic chess game of trying to kill the cancer cells without killing the children at the same time.
Yeah.
So the damage done
Exactly.
to healthy cells remains. So what I do and what I continue to do and what I've dedicated my life to do outside of Still Brave is to make that known, to raise awareness as to what's going on. So a lot of people just don't know. They think in America, well, we live in the greatest country in the world. We've been told that since we were children. We live in the greatest country in the world. So surely we must have the most innovative treatments, cutting-edge treatments, the best that money can buy. We don't. It's ridiculous. We spend more money. Americans spend 20 times more money annually on potato chips than we do on childhood cancer research. Last year in the United States, Americans spent $365 million on Halloween costumes for our pets. That's almost twice what the National Cancer Institute spent on childhood cancer research.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. People don't know. People are unaware of it. I'm miffed and dumbfounded and blown away by these. Once my daughter died, I went down all these rabbit holes and I found out all these facts, and it's not what I'm giving you is not the crazy ravings of a grieving father. These are substantiated truths that I'm telling you.
I know, I understand.
It's preposterous. It's preposterous in this country or any other first world country that we're not doing everything we can to treat our children. We're discounting them. We're discounting their futures, and it's I could speculate why that is. I'd rather what I will speculate. It's about money. And it's about politics, but meanwhile, our children are dying as a direct result of it, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
When a ship goes down at sea, what do they cry? Save the women and children first. Well, the ship is sinking, and our children are drowning, and we're not doing anything. The reason our kids aren't dying from cancer because there's nothing that we can do. Our kids are dying from cancer because we aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I've dedicated my life to making that known. It's a fine line that I skate because Still Brave again doesn't concern themselves with that type of aggressive advocacy and activism, but I do, and I am very vocal about it. And I have done 2 TED Talks. You can find them. I gave more statistics and more facts in those TED Talks. They're very passionate because I'm very passionate. I'm ridiculous. It's ridiculous to have to say this, but I'm going to a funeral on Saturday for a 12-year-old boy, and I was asked to write the eulogy. It's not the first eulogy that I've had to write for a child. It's not the second or the third or the fourth eulogy I've had to write for a child. And I'm only one person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only one person, and I've been to the funerals of more children than I have adults.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's something I would like to say to you, Tom. I think that that's a testament that these parents trust you to do these eulogies. That is so incredible that they love you that much and are so appreciative of what you are doing, that a testament of your heart that you are willing to do that for these families, that you've connected with them. I think that's incredible.
Well, it's a definite honor, and I take it very seriously, and I'm very honored, and I'm touched by the relationships that I have with these families, and I'm glad that in spite of the challenges that I faced in my own life, that I've been able to step up and do this. I consider it a real honor to be asked to deliver these eulogies and to be invited into the homes of these families, mm-hmm. and to be trusted and to be loved by them and to love them as I would my own children. So there is one thing I do like to say, and it's hard to, sometimes I get very on a roll about how unfair, but the thing is, there's a lot of, I think the right way to say this, there's a lot of beauty in what I do too, even when it's not pretty. Mm-hmm. There really is. I call it bits of gold amidst the rubble. Uh-huh. And some of the relationships that I've formed, regardless of the outcomes, have been beautiful and magical. The relationships I have with families, again, regardless of the outcome, if a child does well, goes into remission, the relationship remains. I've established, lifelong relationships with these families. If a child passes away, I stay in touch and continue to communicate and have lifelong relationships with them. And the funny part is, a lot of people say that they talk about that help that I provide and the inspiration, but really I'm the one that benefits from it. And, honestly, I think more so than they do.
Yeah, it is incredible when we give like that to be around these incredible children, that they are the inspiring ones, right?
For sure.
They really are, and they help us. One of the things that I've been saying for the last few years is that our children are our teachers, and these children who have cancer have so much wisdom and are so beautiful and teach us so much and remind us what's most important, and it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very lucky, man.
So I'm going to throw out a question at you that we haven't discussed, and that is, if you could share 3 things for parents whose children have cancer, what were the 3 things the 3 pieces of advice that you would give them as they're going through this? As they're dealing with this day-to-day battle, as they're by their child's side, either during treatment or post-treatment, what are the things that you would share? What's the advice you would give them?
So the number one piece of advice I would give somebody in that situation is to educate yourself, to do your research. It's a scary situation. When you have a family of a newly diagnosed child, the last thing you want to do is tell them, there's been no new drugs approved in the past 30 years. These are the last thing you want to do is scare them more.
Right.
And it's a tough situation that I find myself in, because I don't want to scare a family with a new diagnosis. They're already frightened enough. Mm-hmm. So what I would encourage them, though, first and foremost, is I would say to educate yourself, because you are going to be your child's biggest advocate throughout the treatment process. You have a say in everything that happens to your child, and you should educate yourself, and you should know the ins and outs. And most families with children with cancer become that. They become more knowledgeable, or as knowledgeable as doctors and nurses, and because we have to.
Yeah.
We have to know what's going on in our children's bodies. We have to know the side effects. We have to know what medicines are going to counter those side effects. We have to know what medicines are going to counteract the medicines that are going to counteract the side effects.
Yeah.
We have to know all those things. So educate yourself. And most parents, again, will by default have to do that. But always remember that you are your child's biggest advocate. You have a say in everything that happens to your child, and you have the right to hold that doctor in your hospital room for an hour and a half until all your questions are answered satisfactorily. And if not, don't let him out. turn around and put your back to the door until you're comfortable with every question that's been asked. Now, I have a lot of respect for oncology doctors, and I have a lot of respect for oncology nurses. I think they do one of the hardest jobs in the world. However, as a parent, I do have to hold them accountable, and I do have to help them to help me understand everything that's happening to my child through that treatment process, and to allow me to have a decision-making process, not to tell me we have to do this, we have to do that. I want to know why we have to do this. I want to know what the other options are. I want to know what's in the best interest of my child. And there were times where I had to get aggressive, for lack of a better term, because I am and will always be my child's biggest advocate. And you will too. And that would be the number one most important piece of advice I can give you, is to educate yourself and be your child's biggest advocate. Mm-hmm. So that would be number one. Number two, I would say, I mean, this is a funny thing, but when you're going through the treatment process, horrible things are going to happen. They just are. Mm-hmm. But beautiful things are going to happen too. So just don't be afraid. Don't ever be afraid, because here you are. Okay, and life is funny. And life will deliver things to us that we don't want and that we're ill-equipped to handle. But how often in life has something been accomplished by somebody who was completely incapable of doing it when they were presented with it? You know what I mean? So don't be afraid. There are a lot of happy endings in my work. There are a lot of kids who go on to do amazing things, and they go into remission and they become cancer free, and then they go on to be nurses and doctors and these amazing child life specialists, and they do these amazing things. Mm-hmm. And stay positive and don't be afraid when those horrible things are happening. So that would be the second piece of advice that I would give. And the third piece of advice I would give would be to the fathers, specifically. Okay. And the reason that I would give that is because I am a cancer dad. And that piece of advice would be, do not be too proud to ask for help. Do not be too scared to ask for help. Do not be too proud to ask questions. I don't want this to sound sexist, but as men, sometimes we feel like we have to fix everything, and we have to keep our families together, and that's our job, and that's our role, and we have to be strong, and we have to be brave. But the reality is that cancer doesn't afford us that luxury anymore, and we have to do what's in the best interest of our children. And sometimes that's humbling ourselves and asking for help. Sometimes that's saying, I don't have money to pay rent this month. Can somebody please help me? So sometimes that's sitting down and crying because you're completely overwhelmed. Yeah. And sometimes that's reaching out and asking another man for help or advice, which is very difficult I know it's difficult for a guy like me, so I imagine it's difficult for a lot of men to do that. But yeah, you're right. Your family will depend on you, and your family does rely on you to hold them together. But you need to understand that you're a human being, and you can't fix everything, and you can't do everything. And there's no shame in asking for help, and there is help out there. My organization makes it so easy to get help. Like, there's no forms to sign, there's no promises to make to anybody.
Awesome.
Yeah, you call me if you need help, I will help you. You can whisper it in my ear. The easiest way for you, we make it easy because I know what it was like. So those would be, I could write a book of all the things that I would tell a family with a child in cancer. Those would be the three most important things. It would be advocate for your child, and for men, don't be afraid to ask for help, and also, it's going to be, just don't be afraid. Mm-hmm. Don't ever be afraid,
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay,
so another question for you. So tell us about humor. How did you use humor?
Okay, so I use it in a variety of ways. One of the things that makes me that attracts children to me or makes me attracted to children is I do crack jokes. Mm-hmm. And I was just in Seattle for a big race, and I met this beautiful little girl who was over from England to receive her treatment here in the United States. And, we would just joke and laugh, and I'd put her little girl hat on, and we just had fun. And one of the things that I do is I don't talk down to the kids. I don't, oh, I'm so sorry you're such a hero. I'll pray for you. I'll keep you in my thoughts. I think all of that's great, but kids get tired of that crap. And their kids are smart, and they see that fake pretentious stuff, and they're just not interested in it. So I remember one little boy, he was going through a really, really tough time, and people would say things to him like, "Oh, we're praying for you," and I'd tell him, "Hey, don't poop your pants when you go to your MRI," or whatever. Like, we had that kind of relationship, and he would send me pictures. I was running an ultra marathon at the time, and he would send me a picture of some guy who was running a marathon and crapped his pants during the marathon, and we just have those type of relationships. And I'll crack jokes, and I keep it light, and I keep it real. And one of the things that I do is I don't treat a child with cancer like a child with cancer. I treat a child with cancer like a child. No, I don't even treat them like a child. I treat them like a human being. I treat them the same way that I would treat you. I speak to them the same way that I would speak to you. I don't talk down to them. I don't say anything that would indicate that I don't respect them as much as I respect anybody. And kids are a real good judge of character, and they sense authenticity and they sense realness, and it's really easy to approach children that way. And that's one of the things that I do. I try to make it fun. I make it light. I have a bazillion and one stupid jokes that I give them, and they love them, and we have fun, and I have anybody that knows me will tell you, like, I'm putty in their hands. They can make me do whatever they want, and I'll do it. So.
Well, that's totally awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. That's just incredible. So my very last thing I need to, of course, ask is, what website can we send our audience to so they can learn more about you and they can learn about Still Brave? Where can we go?
Okay, so obviously our website is stillbrave.org.
Okay.
www.stillbrave.org. So you can find out all the information about my daughter's story. You can see my TED Talks.
Okay.
You can see the different events and fundraisers that we have. You can get all the information. Really everything that you want is there. I would encourage you too, though, if you'd like to follow me and my organization on a day-to-day basis, find us on social media. Facebook, I post daily.
Oh, awesome.
I post, with the permission of parents and the families, I post pictures of kids we call them Still Brave families, and the different things that we do, the activities that we do. I'm a huge activist. So there are two separate pages. There's the Tattoo Tom page and there's the Still Brave page. My personal page, I post a lot of activist stuff. I post a lot of advocate stuff. Not so much on the Still Brave page because, again, that's not our mission. But you can follow me on a day-to-day basis and see me in the clinics and see me in the hospitals and see firsthand the work that we're doing, where your charity dollars are going. And the events that we put on a lot of events that are just fun for kids. We have Carnival of Kindness, where it's just this big event where hundreds of kids come out, and we don't charge anything, and it's free ice cream and free cotton candy and
awesome.
Music. Everything's free. And then one day we have a rock concert that we put on once a year called Rock and Renegade, and you can follow all that stuff, and we do all kinds of cool stuff. There's a big event in Washington, D.C. In a couple of weeks called Cure Fest. And a bunch of organizations come from around the country, and Still Brave is one of the biggest supporters of that event. And we'll be setting up the kids' tent there and the welcome event, and you can follow all of that stuff on my Facebook as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds terrific. Thank you so much, Tom. This has been incredible. I've just really enjoyed getting to know more about you, and your humor is wonderful, and your passion. I just think that's incredible what you're doing, and thank you so much. Having been there myself and knowing how hard it is, I know the service that you are providing is just incredible.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care.
All right.
What impressed me most about Tattoo Tom was his ability to recognize so many needs of cancer families. And in the words of Mr. Bigweld from Robots, see a need, fill a need. He stepped up to the plate to do exactly that. I think what he's doing with his organization, Still Brave, is amazing. If you currently have a need you are struggling to have met, please reach out and ask for help. There are people and organizations that want to be there for you. People are amazing if only you will let them help. The reason I do what I do and Tom does what he does is because so many people helped us when we needed it. Let us do the same for you. This is the legacy of our own amazing, caring children. To learn more about Tattoo Tom and the Still Brave organization, please visit his website at stillbrave.org. Please join me next week for part 1 of my interview with Dr. Mark Seaton as we discuss the Pursuit of Happiness organization and 7 habits of happy people and how caring for others can make a difference in our own happiness. Before we end our show today, we have one last segment. Over the last few years, I have asked other cancer moms what advice they wish they had known when their child was first diagnosed. I have compiled that information and will be sharing their advice each week. You can download the top 101 pieces of advice that I put together as a mini ebook at twomothers1prayer.com. Today's advice comes from Karen. Karen writes, I would have liked to have known how the treatment program actually works. For all the side effects we were told about, I was still missing the big picture, while instead being told about the pixels in the picture. When Ella was admitted with sepsis, I had not been prepared for the severity of the illness. One nurse told me, when you went home, we knew she'd be coming back soon. I was never told that any sign of illness after the round of chemo would result in an ICU stay. I learned that as we were being admitted to the ICU. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. It is a reality that we need to face, that this will be an uphill journey, that our children will have days when they are very, very sick. It will require many extra trips to the hospital that you won't anticipate. But the staff are skilled and prepared. They are there to assist and do everything in their power to help your child. I would highly recommend listening to my interviews with Dr. Jeff McCowich, pediatric oncologist. He addresses this very issue. If you haven't listened to it already, I recommend both episodes as well as seeking out his podcast series, Understanding Childhood Cancer with Dr. Jeff. If you have advice you've learned along the way that you wish someone had told you weeks, months, or years earlier, I invite you to fill out the contact form on our website, twomothers1prayer.com, and I will be sharing your advice with our listeners on future shows. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to listen to the Hope.Strength.Courage podcast. I look forward to sharing more experts and advice with you again next Wednesday. Please remember to take a minute to subscribe to the show. Thanks also need to go out to our Hope.Strength.Courage production team, which consists of my wonderful assistant Tracy Ogilvy McDonald, Andrew Braun at Braun Audio and Audio Geek, music by Fizz Anthony, social media support by Marife Constantino, and graphic design by Amy Hosmer. To learn more about myself, Laura Lane, and to order my book, please visit lauralane.ca.